This is the story of a man who used to fight against drugs, but later got trapped in the drug web himself. Some real officers around the world were astonished to learn his truth, and then determined to catch him. Around 1980, the drug trade had grown a lot in the city of Los Angeles, America. When the police in Florida cracked down hard, the routes for drugs shifted, and they began coming to California via Mexico. Every year about 100,000 people were arrested, of whom around 20,000 were drug cases. In every raid, the police started finding large amounts of cash and narcotics. The situation worsened so much that the local police could not control it. So the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, had to step in. At the forefront of this fight was Darnell Garcia, a police officer who began his career with the LAPD and later reached the DEA. Darnell maintained a positive outlook about everything. Even in difficult circumstances, he used to say that everything would be fine. Garcia had two close associates, and Williams and Brian Hudford. These three risked their lives every day trying to remove drugs from the streets. The work was dangerous, but Darnell was skilled at it. He understood the workings of the streets and carried out his work very smartly. Within the DEA, Darnell had a macho, a strong man image which helped him in his undercover work. Garcia was from New York, but later moved to Los Angeles with his family. There he completed high school. Then he joined the Army and served for 3 years during the Vietnam War. After returning from the Army, he began his college studies and developed an interest in a new thing, martial arts. He trained with superstars like Chuck Norris and became a champion himself. He even got roles in big movies like Enter the Dragon. He always wanted to move forward, whether in sports, films, or the police job. But for Darnell, being just a good police officer was not enough. In a city like Los Angeles, where some people are extremely wealthy, police officers often find themselves between vast sums of cash, money that tests their honesty. Especially when their own salaries are very low and running a household is difficult. Darnell wanted a good life. Expensive cars, a big house, a stylish life. But his government job did not provide that income. Gradually he began to take shortcuts and started thinking, I risk my life for this job, and in return I get nothing. If I keep a little money for myself, what's wrong with that? This thinking pushed him onto the path of corruption. Darnell Garcia began living a double life. On one hand, he was an officer of the DEA, and on the other he began to play the same drug game. He spied on drug dealers, watched where they hid their goods, and before the DEA raids, he himself would reach the location and make all the goods disappear. The plan was straightforward and full of cunning. He knew drug sellers would never complain to the police, so there would be no one to catch him, no one to listen. Garcia was playing both sides. He had a police identity, so he was not afraid of the drug sellers. He knew most dealers were cunning enough not to shoot at the police. In the 1980s, drug dealers always carried weapons, but usually they did not confront the police. Garcia began to consider himself invincible. Gradually his two friends, Hudford and Williams, also joined in. Together they built a drug network. They had become real smugglers hiding in police uniform. At first he had only started stealing money. Then he began taking cocaine as well. All he needed now was a good seller, and he found one quickly. He contacted the same old people who used to be his informants. Now those people sold drugs on the street for him. Garcia and his associates had built a network that was no less than any real gang. And the funny thing was that they were doing all this from inside the DEA, without the agency getting a hint. Garcia no longer felt attached to the agency that paid his salary. He knew where the system was weak, and he took advantage of those weaknesses. After every theft, his confidence grew. In January 1983, Garcia and his associates stole about 1 pound of cocaine from a DEA seizure. To cover up their crime, they adopted the same tricks they had learned from criminals over the years. For example, on the street they mixed baking soda into pure cocaine to increase its weight. Garcia used the same trick. His method was very clever. He would remove the real drug from the cocaine packet kept as evidence, and then fill that space with baking soda. But he took care to leave a little cocaine, so that the DEA's lab testing would show traces of cocaine, and no one would suspect that something had been stolen. The plan worked. The DEA never discovered that the evidence bags had been tampered with. In the first 2 years, Garcia and his team stole drugs about 10 times, with a total value of approximately $300. He himself was inside the investigating agency, so he knew when, where, and how drug seizures would take place. He used to monitor drug deals himself first, find where they hid the goods, and then go there before the DEA arrived and take everything. The plan sounds simple, but it was full of guile. He was fully confident that neither any drug seller would complain, nor would he himself speak up. In other words, there was no one to hear, no one to tell. Garcia was playing both sides. He protected himself behind the badge, because he knew that being a policeman, no one would take revenge on him. As time passed, Garcia, Hudford, and Williams had established their own drug company. At first he stole money, then cocaine. Now he needed a good seller, and Garcia knew where to find one. He went to the same informants who had once worked his cases and told them to sell his cocaine on the street. This is the strangest aspect of drug-related investigations. Officers who fight crime constantly live among criminals, and the real challenge is that they themselves do not become part of that filth. But many times these proximities open doors, because the entire career of these officers is spent alongside drug dealers. Garcia and his gang had now built a network that was no less than the gangs of any city. Their business was booming, so much so that money itself became their problem. It was no longer hunger for earnings. Now the difficulty was where to hide this money. The laws at that time were strict. If someone deposited a large sum into a bank account, suspicion would immediately arise. The government had clear rules. If a person deposited more than $0 in a bank, then the bank was required to report it to the government. Therefore, Garcia had to play the entire game in cash. But handling so much cash was becoming difficult. He now needed a method to keep his money safe and hidden. Garcia took the help of his girlfriend Vadi Watford, who was a legal secretary. He told Vadi to buy cashier's checks of $9,000. This amount was deliberately kept below $10,000, so that the bank would not need to report anything to the government. When Garcia had accumulated enough checks, he found a place where he could easily hide all his money, and he found that place in Switzerland. In 1983, Garcia, Hudford, Williams, the three Yorick went. Switzerland's banking system is as dangerous as it is secretive, and people like Garcia need such places. Garcia deposited 12 cashier's checks in his first deposit, the total value of which amounted to $100,000, which is approximately $8. But that was only the beginning. In 1984, Garcia began stealing drugs from the DEA in 1 kilogram parcels. He was fully confident that no one would ever know. In 1985, the DEA transferred him from Los Angeles to Detroit. But Garcia refused to go. After that, Garcia was fired from the agency. But Garcia struck back. Garcia filed a discrimination case against the DEA. A man who had been looting the agency for years still won his case, but Garcia won. The DEA was forced to take him back to work, and this victory made him even more fearless. In October 1984, 1 kilogram of heroin was found missing from the DEA's evidence vault. The keeper of the evidence was interrogated first, but he denied everything. From the signed and sealed records, it was discovered that several agents had access to that vault, among them Darnell Garcia. The DEA initiated an internal investigation and asked some agents to take polygraph tests. Many agents refused. Garcia was one of them. He knew that if he took the test, he would be caught. But polygraphs cannot be forced, so Garcia easily got away. He looked internal affairs in the eye and said clearly, "I will do nothing." When nothing tangible came from the polygraph, the DEA investigated the agents who had access to the vault. Garcia and Hudford were both on that list. But Garcia was not going to stop now. Greed had completely overcome him. He believed the DEA would never catch his actions. This overconfidence made him even more fearless. In November 1995, Garcia and his associates, after casing some drug safe houses, were ready to make their real move. Garcia and his men were targeting one of Los Angeles's biggest drug dealers. They were fully confident this raid was the biggest chance of their lives. When Garcia entered, he made history. He found 400 pounds of cocaine whose total value was. It was one of the largest seizures in Los Angeles to date. But this time there was no press conference, no photo with the mayor, nothing. Because Garcia did not even record this raid. The DEA had no idea that the raid had even taken place. Garcia quietly put all the cocaine into his drug network. To hide the millions of dollars of profit, the gang again turned to Europe. All the money was deposited in secret numbered bank accounts in Europe in cash. As soon as the three of them felt they could not be caught in 1986, the police got a team from the Los Angeles County Safe Department arrested two notorious drug dealers. At first the case seemed ordinary, but during interrogation both dealers began to talk. They revealed that one of their suppliers worked in the police, and they named him Brian Hudford. The investigation team entered Hudford's name into the system and found that he was a DEA agent posted in Los Angeles. After that, the team dug into his close associates, and two names emerged: Darnell Garcia and Ed Williams. Now the DEA itself became alert. Secret surveillance of the three began. But the matter was extremely sensitive. Who could be trusted and who could not? Because when you have to investigate your own people, difficulties double. Many officers had to be kept away from these investigations because they might be friends of Garcia. Garcia himself knew what weapons the agency could use against them, and he could protect himself from all of them. The investigation found that Hudford often used to visit Garcia's apartment, which was right next to the DEA headquarters. Agents questioned an employee of the building. She said that Garcia always paid the rent in cash, but as the investigation intensified, Garcia's life became more complicated. It soon emerged that that apartment was not Garcia's real home. One thing in particular stood out in the investigation without reason: his lifestyle did not match his salary. His new car and new house did not match his pay. In 1987, agents discovered that Garcia had built a new house in a posh community called Rancho Palos. At that time, the DEA's annual salary was about 40 to 0, but Garcia's house was at least $1 million. Garcia told his friends that he had received the down payment money as an inheritance and had borrowed the rest, but the agency was not willing to believe him. Now officers started investigating Garcia's close associates. They hoped to find some clue or suspicious link. If a person is making large amounts of black money, there is often a partner to help whiten it, whether a wife or a girlfriend. Garcia had both a handsome DEA agent. He was a master at living a double life in both his professional and personal life. Although it still wasn't clear whether the women involved in his relationships knew about his illegal activities. If Garcia was doing all this with someone, he had hidden everything very cleverly. Investigators had never seen him meet any drug dealer. So far everything was based on suspicion. There was no concrete evidence against Garcia, but then his phone records surfaced. Garcia had been repeatedly calling a number in New York. Then the DEA sought the help of the NYPD, the New York Police Department. When police investigated that number, they discovered it belonged to Hudford's old informant, Kalan, who had become a drug dealer. NYPD questioned him, but Kalan refused to identify Garcia, Hudford or William. But the police suspected him. They searched his apartment and found some letters in an address book that contained Garcia's initial and his phone number. Kalan's lies did not last long. He cracked. The DEA learned that many overnight packages had been arriving at Kalan's apartment. The investigation made it clear these packages were being sent from Los Angeles and were being sent by Garcia and his associate Brian Hudford. Then Kalan said that Garcia and his people were sending their drugs in overnight ship. He would send them to New York and then the profits would be sent back to California via overnight delivery. The system was simple but very effective. The overnight delivery receipts were the evidence the authorities need. Now the DEA decided that to prevent the three from warning each other, they would arrest all three together. After a 3-year-long investigation, police action began on November 20. Brian Hudford was arrested outside his home, and he did not resist. Then Williams was also taken into custody. Now it was Garcia's turn. The team of officers surrounded his house. Police searched the house, but they found no trace of Garcia. They only found those photographs that told the story of his fast and lavish life. Darnell Garcia, the DEA agent turned drug dealer, had now disappeared. But the question was, how did he know the police were coming to arrest him? The investigation revealed that a girlfriend who worked at the courthouse had warned him. She had shown him the arrest warrant and had alerted Garcia. When she was asked later, she said she did not know where he had gone. The officer's disappointment was clear. A case prepared with so much effort, but the accused had gone missing. 26 serious charges had been filed against Garcia: drug trafficking, conspiracy, tax evasion, and cash transaction irregularity. The DEA maintained surveillance, But Garcia did not return to his home. He was crafty, but disappearing while remaining on the ground is not that easy. Garcia was a former law enforcement officer, but now he was himself on the run from the law. The police had several leads by which his search could begin. Then the DEA began to comb through Garcia's entire file. His old contacts and acquaintances were questioned, but no one knew where he had gone. 2 months passed. Suddenly the police received a call. Someone had seen Garcia at a club in North Hollywood. This was a big hope in the case. Federal and local police together began searching the streets and surrounding area. They were determined that this time Garcia would not slip from their hands now. Garcia considered himself very clever and intelligent. He believed that the DEA would never be able to catch him. He thought he was smarter than them, but still, for the second time, the police returned empty-handed. Neither Garcia was found, nor could they understand his intentions. June 1989 had arrived, but the police still had not been able to find him. The DEA kept surveillance on his wife Anita and his 12-year-old son. But after some time, both of them also disappeared without leaving a trace. Now that his family had also vanished, the agency suspected that Garcia had cut all ties with America and was trying to disappear forever. In today's world, if a person is ready to spend money, he can easily hide anywhere in the world. Therefore, the police needed to catch him as soon as possible. To stop Garcia, the police had to find out where he had hidden his money. The investigation revealed that Garcia had bought an expensive house and claimed that he had taken a loan from an Italian businessman. But the truth was something else. That loan was completely fake. Now the officers examined the documents. They found that those papers had been forged by Garcia himself so that he could hide the fact that the money used to buy the house was earned from drugs. Further investigation revealed another truth. In May 1987, $20,000 had been transferred to Garcia's account from a bank in Switzerland. The DEA asked the Swiss government for information about Garcia's account, but by the time the bank's name was identified, Garcia had already closed that account. Still, the DEA did not give up. They began digging through the entire history of Garcia's money. While following Garcia's financial trail, the DEA found more records connected to his funds. They learned that he had another bank account in Luxembourg. They suspected that Garcia might be hiding there. The DEA then sought help from Interpol because Interpol's network was vast. When they sent out an alert, it spread across dozens of countries simultaneously. Hotels, borders, banks. Luxembourg, which lies between France and Germany, is actually a major financial hub. Criminals from all over the world stop here or conduct transactions. An officer named P.N. Conan, who worked with Interpol, received a call from the DEA. He was asked to start looking for Garcia. Conan knew that Garcia was not an ordinary criminal. He himself had once been a man of the law and knew very well how to escape capture. Conan went to the bank where Garcia's account had been. But once again it was too late. Garcia had already closed that account too. However, the bank manager clearly remembered the transaction. Garcia had withdrawn about $3 million in cash from the bank. He had put the money into plastic bags and told the manager, "Come outside, I'll show you my car." The manager thought it would be some expensive sports car, maybe a Ferrari. But when he went outside, he saw only a bicycle. Garcia had rented that bicycle from a hotel. The hotel's sticker was still on it. Now Conan had a small but valuable lead to find Garcia. Maybe this clue would help him catch the clever DEA agent turned drug dealer. Then in June 1989, Garcia was spotted once again in Luxembourg, but he disappeared immediately. This time with the plastic bag containing $3 million. Interpol believed that if Garcia was indeed in Luxembourg, this might be their best chance to capture him. Even though Garcia was a trained law officer, he was now outside the United States in a place where he could easily come under public notice. There he was a stranger, and strangers are more likely to make mistakes. Garcia had last been seen riding a bicycle. Interpol tracked that bicycle and traced it to a nearby hotel. When the hotel's staff was questioned, they recognized him. They said that Garcia was a regular guest there. Conan then checked the hotel's phone records. One of the calls had been made to a travel agency. When the agents reached that travel agency, a young female employee recognized Garcia. She said that Garcia had booked tickets through her many times and had often flown from Luxembourg to Paris. The agents could not trace Garcia's next destination, but they were hopeful that he would be seen again. Conan's attention now turned once more to the money. It was suspected that Garcia might have deposited the $3 million into another bank. But when all the nearby banks were checked, no new account under Garcia's name was found, so the question arose, where had Garcia gone with that money? Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, the officers were also continuing the search for him. The LA agents had a theory. Whenever you want to catch a fugitive, focus on his hobbies or favorite activities. Garcia was very fond of Grand Prix racing. Now a big race was about to take place in France. Thousands of people come to such events, making it the perfect place for Garcia to disappear into the crowd. The DEA and Interpol did not give up. They began checking the hotel records and bookings across France, hoping to find Garcia. Then on July 3, 1989, luck favored them in Paris. In one hotel's register, Garcia's wife and son were found to have checked in. Seeing this, the officers suspected that Garcia might also be in France, perhaps for the race. The French police started surveillance of that hotel, hoping that Garcia himself would appear there. But in the meantime, Garcia made a huge mistake in Luxembourg. He went to a travel agency to cancel an old ticket and collect a $200 refund. Imagine, a man hiding with millions of dollars risked exposure for such a small amount. The female employee at the travel agency recognized Garcia. She realized this was her chance. She quietly went outside and called the police. She told Conan, "Garcia is about to leave. Come quickly." Conan told her, "Do whatever you can to stop him. Keep him talking, delay him, just don't let him leave." Now everything depended on that woman. On the other side, Conan and his partner, armed with guns, rushed toward the location. For 7 months, Darnell Garcia had been escaping the law, but now finally, there was a chance to catch him. Garcia was a dangerous criminal. He could be armed, and there was a chance he might take the woman in the agency hostage. Or worse, Conan and his partner arrived there. They had no backup, just 2 officers facing a highly trained former DEA agent. The situation was tense. They didn't know whether he was armed or not. Then both officers slowly approached Garcia and drew their guns at the same time. As soon as Garcia looked up, he saw 2 .357 Magnum pistols aimed directly at him. He was arrested right there. For the greed of getting just $200 back, he came out again and fell into the hands of the police. After 7 years of illegal drug dealing and 7 months on the run, Garcia was finally behind bars. Now Garcia had been arrested, but bringing him back to America was not easy. Luxembourg's law stated that if the United States failed to submit the complete extradition file with solid evidence within 30 days, Garcia would have to be released. They had only 1 month. Now both the DEA and Interpol were worried that after all this effort, Garcia might slip away again. Meanwhile in Luxembourg, Conan was keeping a close eye on Garcia in jail. He hoped that Garcia might make a mistake that could lead them to the missing $3 million. Garcia's wife used to visit him in prison, but she wasn't the only one. Soon, his girlfriend also started coming. One morning the wife would come, and by afternoon, the girlfriend. Conan realized that either Garcia's charm was incredibly strong, or the influence of those $3 million was very deep. Now Conan made a move. He started surveillance on both Garcia's wife and girlfriend, hoping that one of them would lead him to the money. But this plan failed. Neither the girlfriend did anything suspicious, nor did the wife visit any bank. Conan suspected that Garcia had trained his wife to recognize police surveillance. Within half an hour she disappeared from police sight. Then Conan and his team began searching Garcia's belongings. He had 2 large suitcases filled with documents. Among those papers, they found one number. That number was traced. It turned out to be a bank account, but there was no account under Garcia's name. Later it was discovered that he had opened the account under a fake name, Ellis. About $3 million had been deposited there, but when the police reached the bank, the account was empty. The bank manager said that Garcia's wife had come there a few days earlier. She had the power of attorney, through which she withdrew all the money. Now the $3 million had disappeared again. Once again all the banks in Luxembourg were alerted. They were instructed that if, after Garcia's arrest, anyone closed a large account, they must inform the authorities immediately. Some of the bank records matched. The investigation revealed that Garcia had given his wife and girlfriend the money to keep safe. Both had opened accounts under different names. Finally, Interpol and Conan located Garcia's $3 million. Now the DEA had the evidence needed to bring Garcia back to America and put him on trial. Garcia's wife Anita and his girlfriend were both arrested, and their bank accounts were seized. Garcia was kept in a Luxembourg jail for 6 months on charges of possessing a fake passport. After that, he was brought back to the United States. In Los Angeles, his associates Brian Hudford and Ed Williams confessed to drug trafficking. Hudford was sentenced to 10 years, and Williams received 5 years in prison. Both testified against Garcia. Garcia's wife was sentenced to 4 years, and his girlfriend to 3 years in prison, but both were released on bail and never returned. They remain missing to this day. On November 15, 1991, Garcia was presented before the American court. Then on April 16, 1991, Garcia was found guilty of selling cocaine and heroin and laundering millions of dollars through European banks. He was fined $1.6 million and sentenced to 80 years in prison. If you liked this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video.